Alright, Chapter 2, Lesson 4, I believe. Chapter 2, Lesson 4. We're looking at the concept of freedom with leisure. And what exactly is that? Well, leisure is about promoting personal fulfillment and self-enrichment. Personal fulfillment and self-enrichment. It's part of your being. It's part of your entire lifestyle. And that seeing leisure or leisure time as a way to self-enrich, to express, to basically have a 100% positive experience is something that should be attained, something that you should look forward to doing. And that when you are free, just small points, small little time periods throughout the day where you experience that freedom, just you're walking down the hall and you just take a deep breath and you think about all the great things in your life and just experience that freedom, just a little bit of leisure there. Just it's almost like an emotional pickup, and you're back to work and feeling good. Seeing that leisure is free time. It's not an activity. It can be. Many people see like, well, if I'm not at the gym, I'm not experiencing leisure. No, you can be experiencing leisure simply through a mindset and understanding that the ability to self-enrich, and to personally fulfill, to fill the tank back up. Okay, and whether that's simply by having some good thoughts about someone, having some good thoughts about your goals or where you're going in life, all of that can be seen as leisure, as a state marked by freedom. It's a state of mind, it's a state of being. So to help that, there's a couple things to look at. One is leisure as spiritual expression, and leisure as state of being. State of being and spiritual expression are very similar. Say, for example, you decide to take 6 months off because you've read the 4-Hour Work Week book, and you decide to go travel Europe for 90 days. Okay, and you immerse yourself in there, and you're really traveling, and you're by yourself, and you're meeting people, and you're having all these great experiences. And leisure as a state of being. You've actually immersed yourself into a leisure experience. Is there obligation? Probably. Okay, but it's still free time, the other part of the definition, and you're probably having some type of a spiritual expression there. And that spiritual expression can happen in a traveling situation like that. 90 days of traveling, you're probably going to get to know oneself a little bit. You may have a spiritual experience in terms of traditional religion, where you're going to be involved in some type of a church. And you're going to experience leisure associated with religion and or with some sort of spiritual pursuit. Excellent, very healthy, very uplifting, very good for one's personal self. If you don't do that, then that may happen if you do a long trip, or if you do something where you having the chance to connect with the innermost being of yourself. And that can happen solo, that can happen with other people, and that can also happen through faith. So these are some of the ways that leisure is marked by a state of being and as spiritual expression. And then lastly, we're going to look at how leisure is related to work, which is probably where everyone, some of these other ones might be a little too abstract right now, but everybody can relate to work because people have had the ability to work. And so we've passed several slides here, and I guess did I miss it? Okay, so 2 theories. One is compensating, or the compensating theory for leisure. The way to remember this theory is that you are compensating for your stressful job. Okay, you, in your leisure time, you do something different than what you do for work. That means you're in theory number one, you're compensating, okay, or the compensating theory of leisure. So you have now moved from work, I don't like it, I don't like what I do, it's terrible, to I'm going to do something completely opposite in my leisure time. Okay, so that's one way to see your leisure seen in a relationship to work. So you do something completely different because you don't like your job. And that's going to be about 90% of you. The other 10% are going to be interested in the spillover theory of leisure. What this is what you do for your career or for your work you like so much that you do in your leisure time. You recreate in your leisure time the same activities that you participate in your work. It's not 100% true for myself. However, I do many types of outdoor recreation trips. I love the trips. Yes, it is hard work. But it is fun, and I like it a lot. When I have free time, I go out and do a trip with myself or with some friends or something like that. Very similar. So I would fall into the spillover theory of leisure, where most of you will tell me that you don't like work and you go to the bar or to the gym or something like that because you want to get away from work or de-stress, relax, whatever. So those are the two ways that leisure is seen in relationship to work. So in closing leisure, we've got a couple more things for chapter 2 and then we're done. We have the third term called recreation. And recreation is really the fusion between leisure and activity, or play and leisure. Play tends to be very activity based. Leisure is unobligated free time or free time. And so to remember this, let's say recreation refreshes and restores through a fusion between play and leisure. Or in other words, recreation is the activities that revive us, the activities that renew us, the activities that are awesome, that they're creative and they're pleasant and they're fun, and it may not always be like that 100% because you could be tailgating and you could run out of charcoal. Not that would happen, but you know what I mean? Things can go wrong. However, they usually don't, and this fusion between play and leisure is pretty exciting, and it refreshes and restores and renews you. That's your definition of recreation. That's how you know. And there's a variety of ways that folks participate in recreational activities. We've talked about a lot of them right there. But this is recreation is activity. The next slide. Recreation is a state of being. Recreation is a social institution. Okay, professional field. There is voluntary participation. Okay. As we'll talk about more of this later in the class, there's a variety of different types of behaviors associated with recreational activities: socializing, associative, basically networking, competitive, risk-taking, exploratory. Recreation can also be an outcome, that the way you feel after an activity, what the activity does for you physically or mentally, what it does for you socially, even what it does for you maybe associated with your career. Okay, but just remember that it restores and renews, and it is a fusion between play and leisure. So when we use the word recreation, it's all encompassing. You may be playing, you may be having leisure time, you may be having just an activity, but that's recreation. Recreation is the broader term. Okay. Social acceptability, we'll talk about that later. So we're talking about it as a social institution, we'll talk about it later. And then there's some summary there about how it's defined. Okay, usually voluntary. usually intrinsic pleasure. Okay, may involve a degree of discomfort and pain and negative. You run out of charcoal. I just mentioned that, but it's mostly socially constructive. It's very positive, refreshes, restores, helps you in a variety of ways: health, fitness, emotional IQ, all of these things. So it's a very, very positive experience, even though it can end up not being, but overall it is. So I'll be back and we'll talk about Chapter 3.